everyone, and welcome back. We're going to start the second session on sustainable development. This morning we had Steve Jarrett and Brulot. So what the impacts of AI can be and how it can help us leverage a lot of issues, meet a lot of challenges, and we saw with Faisal how AI and generative AI are revolutionizing the way we interact globally, but also Orange's position, which is the strategy of true solutions implemented by Orange, DNU to train more people and onboard as many people as possible to AI. We saw also how AI can globally impact activity sectors in African agriculture, healthcare, education. We also saw how Orange interacts with the ecosystem of partners and startup companies and youth as well. We talked about over 1 million youth supported in the Orange Digital Center. So the second session on sustainable development, in fact, we have Nathalie for the second session here, and she is the CSR manager at Orange Innovation, and she's going to talk to us about the environment. The first question we saw with Faisal that AI and generative AI use a lot of energy, require a lot of energy. So thinking about the impact on the environment, if today we were to define the sustainable development in the environment, the impact of AI in that, what would you say? Well, hello, I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Thank you so much, Youssoufa. Well, if you set the stage, you have to understand when we talk about sustainable development and ecological transition, what are we talking about? So sustainable development is a bit going, if we go back, it was in 1987 in the Brundtland report of the UN Commission, and it says that sustainable development has to meet the needs of the current generation without compromising the future generation. So it includes economics, it includes social issues and the environment. So the ecological transition is a determination to offer solutions to, in fact, reduce the human actions that have a negative impact on the environment. So we help, the idea is to help populations live in a healthy environment. We'll see this in a moment, how artificial intelligence can help achieve this goal. It's positive, in fact. Well, thank you very much, Nathalie. The other question is, today, if we look at generative AI, or just simple AI, we've seen positive impacts, okay, but how can it be technology that is not negative and can help the environment? Well, if you say AI, you and Faisal get this, there are different types of AI. There are classic AIs and generative AIs. That's ChatGPT. Generative AIs are now included onboarding in almost all digital services. So let me give you a little history as to how artificial intelligence is created by looking behind the scenes. If you use artificial intelligence today, the cost is free. There's no impact on the environment. But when you're using artificial intelligence, it requires data centers. have to have lots of data centers to train that data. And for those, you need electricity, hardware as well. And so that's probably the most symbolic impact on the environment. So it's GPUs. They use rare resources that are, in fact, rare and create scarcity. So the processing training of the machines run for hours and hours and hours. So you need electricity and you need water to cool the data centers. So there's a lot of electricity consumed, a lot of natural resources, so water in the training learning phases, so that the end user, we have no control over that. But if you use generative AI, we use it, we'll use it regularly, and there's these sort of rebound effects. People don't necessarily use Google searches anymore. They just ask for the AI to give them the answers, and Gen AI to generate something for them. So but each time you use Gen AI, you're reaching out to that data center that carries out the computation. So those are millions and billions of connections per day on ChatGPT, which has a direct impact on the energy, electricity, water consumption. So if you think about the electricity for France, today, there's so much energy required for data centers, but between now and 2030, the projections on average are 10% increase to run the data centers for Gen AI, so 10 additional percent. Well, okay, thank you, Nathalie, for that clarification. Okay, that's the sort of negative aspect of AI, quote unquote, on the environment, generally speaking. But today, is AI and Gen AI, could they be positive in terms of the ecological transition? Well, I think for a really long time, people realize that it's an opportunity. So typical classic AI has already been used concretely to assist the African continent to have access to electricity. Today, we know that having access to energy, to electricity is an issue in Africa. In Orange, in Mali, we have machine learning tools we're using to smooth out the electricity load across the grid, striving to meet the needs of the households to provide better continuity of electricity services. So that's a simple classic AI, optimizes the energy efficiency for the households thanks to AI technology, the typical classic AI. We have other examples where it is a challenge fighting global warming. We've heard a lot about carbon these days, and it comes mostly from fossil fuels, gas, coal, etc. So in fact, we need to strive to have greater amounts of renewable energies. And that's using the sun, right? And so solar energy in Africa. And so specifically, Orange has a very ambitious program across the region where we are proposing to put solar panels on the telecom poles to leverage the solar energy. And so that would be producing decarbonized energy. So we have lots of areas that benefit from this solarization. And so your question is, how does AI contribute to that? Well, AI, as we saw earlier, is optimization. So same here, we optimize these solar systems to make them last longer. We can predict heat areas to increase their reach and store future energy. So here you see an indirect contribution to the ecological transition through AI. Well, thank you. So in the OMIA zone, we have a lot of ambition in the rural coverage. That is one of the issues. So this ambition is supported by a position on how we can optimize energy consumption with some sites who are 100% solar, which are 100% solarized, as you said. So AI can help optimize solar energy users and also the monitoring of these sites. And I think that through these AI solutions, we can have much more rational consumption, much more lean consumption. So how about as a citizen, as an Orange user, or as a digital partner, what can we do? What can we provide as a stakeholder in terms of sustainable development? Well, I don't think there's a single answer to that. I think the living force of the African continent is, I think there's a lot to contribute in terms of the vision. There's a lot of innovation in Africa as well in these areas. The first point would be that. Okay, what do you think concretely are the uses of classic AI, preferably because of the energy impact, but to contribute to the ecological transition? I think there are a lot of things to do, to be done, to be invented, not enough use cases yet, but I think the challenge is how can we improve the ecological transition, either through hardware equipment? How can we reduce the hardware of digital technology? How can we optimize the energy that we do use? And AI models, for instance, we can find better ways to build. Okay, well, thank you for that. If we come back to Orange in this, could you tell us about some of the main goals, the main objectives behind Orange's CSR program and Orange's commitment to sustainable development? Well, I'm very proud of Orange for what we've been doing in this area. If we look at artificial intelligence, well, in terms of sustainability, in Orange, we've been striving for a net zero objective, net carbon zero for 2040, using AI to achieve those goals of net zero carbon, leveraging our networks that, of course, do consume energy, and there's hardware there, so we use AI to improve that there, so we can use AI to reduce the traveling of our technicians. So AI will enable us to optimize that, less traveling of our tech and engineers to repair things, to avoid getting in the car truck and going there. Then also we have solutions for frugal AI, or simple or sustainable AI, identifying best practices amongst our teams and outside the company, having the best reflexes when using Gen AI, using it at the right time, at the right place. Okay, thank you. That does represent some of Orange's positions regarding the environment, across various activities. Let me move to another area. We saw DeepSeek a couple of weeks ago. And if you have some metrics to compare, would we say that that brings a bit of sunshine to this environment that's been a bit skeptical as regards the use of Gen AI? Could this be a new era, more optimism, for instance, as regards to AI and the environment? Well, I think so. There's a lot of positive points coming up. One is DeepSeek. There will be other tools as well. They're open source tools that are coming out frequently. And this shows us that there is a different pathway for artificial intelligence. So with certain constraints, we can have a more frugal AI in the learning aspect of things. And this can help us with our commitments in electricity. And so I like to challenge people in these topics. And there's the Jevons paradox. If you're striving for optimization, you have rebound effects, and we're seeing that in history. But I think there's a lot of work to be done to reduce our environmental footprint for Gen AI. That could be something, it's a good thing that DeepSeek has come around, that it challenges the ecosystem and the new generative AI initiatives. So it's the right time, I think. You have to make sure that you use Gen AI at the right time, right place. Okay, as you were saying, and we're at the beginning of the story, we realized that we'd ask people to look forward at DeepSeek and impact it can have. We don't necessarily have the answers today yet, but there can be some solutions that are provide proper performance, but we can reduce the energy and reduce the hardware. That's what we need to do. We know that there's a good outlook, and AI can help us. There, another point is that first panelist stressed, this is about Stephen Burlett, the fact that today we have AI that's based in 3 areas. How can we improve our customer experience, have a smarter network, have more anticipation, automation, challenge investment choices, especially in Africa, where we have coverage issues that are still substantial, mobile and fixed. So also how AI can be an important point for employability, and generally speaking, for this concept or vision is that we have definitions with our partners and the startup companies that are on board with us. And I think that's really important for the audience here and everyone's watching us. Okay, we're looking at the ecosystem, helping with the AI development to go further, but we must be responsible, sustainable as regards the environment, and see how we can find the best solution. Steve stressed this, saying we have to always find the right solution that suits the problem. I don't want to use AI massively if the issue can be handled more basically with data science or a less energy consuming solution over AI or Gen AI. So now to come back to, I mentioned DeepSeek and the impact that it can have. And you talked about the objectives, our SD objectives at Orange. If we project further, way further down the road, today, would you say that you have any convictions regarding sustainable development and AI? For the people following us here, if you could give us a couple of important points for the folks who are not necessarily experts here, but in fact, they're very concerned about the impact, the environmental impact.
The environmental impact of AI. Well, I attended a conference last Friday at the AI Action Summit, and there were a number of scientists who would talk about the elephant and the bee. I thought it was an interesting parallel, quite visual. So the generative AI is kind of the elephant in the room. It's big, power hungry in terms of environmental impact. And the bee is kind of conventional AI. And as Steve was saying this morning, I think you really need to use a lot of creativity to find the right solution. And the solution is not necessarily just the elephant. It's what you can find in the solutions of tomorrow. Perhaps you could have smaller elephants, slimmer, leaner elephants, but they will still be the size of an elephant. And then we're going to need to try and mix elephants and bees to reduce the environmental impact. And I think that can also help to improve algorithmic performance, because we can see that conventional AI can be a good way to compensate things. Economically, they're more economic and they have a better energy performance. So you need to find the right bee and the right elephant to create digital solutions. It's something that you need to bear in mind going forward when developing products and services. So I think that what we can do as empowered citizens, I was saying earlier that an inference consumed a lot of energy in a data center. And people often ask, what can I do? And I think what we can do as citizens, when using Gen AI, do I really need to use it? Do you really need this or that at a given moment? So yes, of course, Gen AI is very important for code, for writing, for scientific research. But you need to be aware of when you're using it, and you try to think about your prompt. The prompt is what you use to trigger the Gen AI. So you need to think about your prompt before you press enter. Because when you press enter, that's when electricity starts to be consumed. So try to improve your prompts to reduce your environmental impact. That's something that each individual can do when using Gen AI. Thanks. I think that's really super inspiring and shows that there is a dimension of responsibility beyond whatever strategy or beyond our corporate strategy. Everyone needs to be aware, as Nathalie was saying, that we need to use the right tool to address the right problem. And that can probably further the collective commitment to address these issues more efficiently and more sustainably. And it also shows, Faisal was talking about this earlier, he compared the strategy in Europe and the US, where the US is innovation first and Europe tends to be regulation first. We in Africa could probably seize the opportunity, because we have a lot of challenges we're facing where AI could probably help. And I think we probably need to become more aware of the impact on the environment. And all of this is highly compatible, as Nathalie was just saying. We can't exclude ourselves from technological progress purely because there are impacts. And in fact, these impacts might be an opportunity, as Nathalie was saying. But that greater awareness that we all have is important. Trying to look at your prompts and trying to make the right choices, the right decisions, that is really going to contribute to a more responsible use of AI. There is, of course, an impact of AI on the business every day, but it needs to factor in all of the environmental constraints. So let me remind you that there are thousands and thousands of people who are watching this, both in French and English. And Nathalie is still with us. I see that we're receiving huge amounts of questions about the environment. So it's a subject that's a lot of people find very exciting. So Nathalie, I'll probably start with the first question, which you touched upon in your introduction. How can AI contribute to the fight against climate change? Yes, I gave you a few examples at Orange, but perhaps I could expand that, the knowledge that I acquired through the AI Summit, the AI Action Summit. There was a whole day with workshops and use cases about sustainable AI, and AI for good, as it's called. One of the use cases that I thought was interesting was the use of AI for text, for speech, and for image. For text, I'm sure that you're all aware that in the age of AI, there's a lot of mis and disinformation. A lot of use cases were created by citizens or NGOs where they use AI to detect fake news within the messages that they read. And that's a good way to fight misinformation or disinformation about climate change. So that's an interesting potential use there. And then on images, in terms of the categorization of images, what can be done? When categorizing images, if you look at maps, for instance, maps of the artificialization of land use, that's very useful for agriculture. How can you help farmers to improve their knowledge of the land to improve yields? And there you can use satellite imagery. It's not an intuition there, it's a forecast or a prediction about how things can evolve thanks to meteorological data. And then I was talking about audio. That was quite unexpected. I hadn't heard about it myself, but maybe some of you had. In fact, audio can be analyzed. You can take soundtracks, you record the sounds of a forest, and you can actually hear whether there's deforestation. They manage to analyze, to cut through the background noise and find the chainsaw. So it's a way to try and identify deforestation, or it could also be used to assess biodiversity by analyzing bird song and so on. Thanks, Nathalie, for your answer. Let me move on to a second question. How can you optimize and reduce the environmental impact of AI infrastructure in Africa? Well, as we saw, it's the data centers that are the most power-hungry elements in AI. So you need to really think out a robust and sustainable and lasting data center. The longer your hardware lasts, the better. How can you create a data center that can continue running for as long as possible to address local needs? There was someone there in that summit who set up a data center in their own region, and they said that they factored in all of the stakeholders around the data center, the local community, because it has an impact on their life. And how could that impact be made positive? So you really need to onboard the ecosystem of communities, governments, institutions, other companies around yours to generate positive outcomes. It's a collective issue. It's not just the company that builds the data center that creates positivity. For instance, we reuse the heat from data centers to heat our homes in Europe where it's cold, but you could imagine other uses in Africa that could be virtuous, both in reducing the data center's environmental impact and improving living conditions for the local population by reusing that surplus energy to, say, generate power for the local community. Thanks very much, Nathalie, with these examples of how to impact on the environment. Another question, which I think you discussed already in the first part of your answer. How can AI help to contribute to sustainable solutions in Africa? How can it be used as an opportunity? Well, I was talking with the Orange Digital Center. I think in terms of training, there's AI training available now in the customer centers. And I think there's an important aspect here that's eco-design. How can you create solutions with a lower impact? across the life cycle. So education, acculturation is a very powerful lever, because the sustainable development is not just the environment. It's not just the green transition. I'm sure Emily will talk about this afternoon, but there's also the societal aspect. There's AI for health. Maybe Stephen talked about it, AI for education, which I truly believe can contribute powerfully to society through a number of use cases. So, absolutely, a true opportunity there. Thank you so much, Nathalie, for your insights. They're extremely interesting, and that probably give us a better vision of environmental implications, and also allow us to factor things in when at the start, from the onset, because in Africa, perhaps we're just starting now. Maybe when things started in the US, there was not such powerful awareness of the implications. And I think for Africa, it can be an opportunity for all of our zone to really factor all of that into the AI strategy, that there can be this real consideration for sustainable development. So to round off, of course, we have thousands of young people, we have entrepreneurs who are online, who are watching this conference. If you were to say a few words of conclusion about AI and sustainable development, what would they be? Well, I think we really need to take care of these young people. You all out there, you need to understand that it's not just for the older generation or the younger generation. I think the younger generation needs reassurance that everyone is taking this seriously. Technology is also a powerful lever if it's used responsibly. I think you obviously cannot consider that technology is the all-encompassing solution, but there are lots of things that can be done for climate change, for global warming. How can AI be used to truly help us, including in Africa, to access essential services? I was talking about electricity. It might be a powerful lever to help for the electrification of Africa and of African homes. And I think if we have driven and smart young people, as you have in your African ecosystem, AI can probably help them to build a better world in a healthier planet. Thank you very much, Nathalie. I think the key takeaway here is that technology is a major lever for change if it's used responsibly. So again, many thanks to Nathalie for her contribution and her powerful insights, which are going to help us and help the community to better factor in environmental aspects in what we do. So again, thank you, Nathalie. And we're going to be closing our morning session with this panel discussion around sustainable development. And this afternoon, we'll resume with 3 more panel discussions, one about ethics, about security, and about employability, so that we can continue to assess the impact of AI in all of these different fields and how Orange is supporting various stakeholders and supporting the ecosystem more generally to make today's AI a key driver in our business challenges within a more responsible context. So many thanks to all of you for your attention. And many thanks for all of your questions. We've received masses of questions. Unfortunately, you can't answer them all, but it's clear evidence of how important you consider this. Okay, so see you this afternoon.